This man had just arrived at the prison and was targeted by other inmates. They planned to have some fun with him in the back door. At a critical moment, his cellmate came to his aid. He jumped off the bed and headbutted the inmate, crashed his head and beat it on the bed. The other inmate was almost unconscious before the cellmate stopped. The prisoner's younger brother was frightened. He gave up the sunglasses he was wearing. The man put on the sunglasses and went outside for some fresh air. However, the prison gang wouldn't let it go so easily. Soon, a group of big guys cornered him in the restroom. The man took off his sunglasses and single-handedly fought against them. He easily defeated several inmates. He even popped one of their eyes. At this moment, the prison guards received the message and rushed over. In less than 20 seconds, the man finished the fight. The arriving guards dealt with the aftermath. Then both of them were taken to the cells. The man's name was Jack, and he was a veteran, but he was sent to prison as a murderer. A few hours ago, he had just arrived in a small town. He was planning to have lunch at a restaurant, but suddenly 4 police sirens blared. The restaurant was surrounded by the police. Jack looked around and noticed that the restaurant was filled with elderly people and children. He immediately understood they were looking for him. He took out some change and placed it on the table. He put his hands where they could be seen. Jack surrendered, but the officers' words left him puzzled. They wanted to arrest him for murder. Being labeled as a murderer, Jack didn't panic, but cooperated with the police and went to the police station. Jack was interrogated by Detective Oscar. At this point, Jack finally learned what had happened. There had been a murder in the small town. The body was found near the highway. 2 fatal shots were fired at the back of the head. The body was covered with cardboard. The body had also been beaten. No shell casings were found at the scene. Because there was a witness, Jack had walked by the highway this morning, thus making him the prime suspect. At this moment, Jack had a basic understanding of the case, and then defended himself. With strong logical reasoning, through a few words from the detective, he could deduce that there were 3 perpetrators. The shooter had committed previous crimes and knew to pick up the shell casings. The person who beat the body must be mentally disturbed, while the shooter was particularly cautious and wouldn't casually cover the body. The killer lacked rationality and wouldn't cover the body. There must be a 3rd person at the scene. Jack was just visiting the town and happened to pass by, but Oscar didn't believe him. To prove his innocence, he voluntarily suggested checking the bus surveillance footage. The time of death was midnight, and he was still on the bus, but retrieving the footage would take time. Jack was locked up in the detention center. Oscar continued the investigation. Based on the phone number left at the crime scene, Oscar located the owner of the phone, Paul. Paul was a banker. Initially, he didn't care about the police investigation, but when he saw a black car outside the door, suddenly became very nervous. Voluntarily admitted to being the murderer. Paul was taken back to the police station. Jack saw someone confessing, freed himself, started to leave, but was stopped by Oscar. It turned out, the police chief valued Jack's exceptional deductive abilities and wanted to keep him to assist with the investigation. With his talent, Jack revealed the police chief's secret, wearing expensive suits, but not coordinated at all. Clearly, no woman was taking care of him. The worn-out wedding ring on his hand indicated that the police chief often played with it. The police chief must have recently divorced. The mention of divorce broke the police chief's guard. Jack deduced once again, there must be a connection between Officer Leo and Paul. There must be some kind of relationship. Just a moment ago, Paul and Leo exchanged a 2-second glance. That was enough to prove everything. Oscar brought Leo in for questioning. Sure enough, Leo and Paul had been in contact. On the night of the crime, they were together at a gathering, so Paul couldn't have been at the crime scene. But why did he confess? Oscar didn't understand. He decided to keep him in jail for observation for a week. Perhaps Paul will confess. Oscar also put Jack in prison. A full body inspection is required when entering prison. Jack threatened the prison guard. Faced with a towering Jack, the prison guard Spike was instantly intimidated. The next day, Jack discovered they were intentionally placed in the cell with dangerous criminals. Trouble quickly found them. Paul had his glasses stolen. The inmates wanted to bully him. Fortunately, Jack was there with Paul. In less than 2 seconds, he dealt with the trouble. Jack left with the spoils. Paul became increasingly dependent on Jack. Paul told Jack the reason for his confession. Someone threatened him, let him help run financial schemes. If it didn't agree, the consequences would be dire. His family would also be in danger. Paul chose to confess to save his life. Soon, the second batch of trouble arrived. They saw Jack wearing glasses. They surrounded him. Jack single-handedly beat up several inmates. While Jack was causing chaos in the prison, a policewoman placed Jack's background investigation report on Oscar's desk. The information revealed Jack graduated from West Point Military Academy. He is a major. During his service, he received enough medals to circle the earth. During his time as a political police officer, he handled 150 cases. He captured over 20 fugitives. It's evident he is definitely a tough person. After reading this information, Oscar felt some regret. He bailed out Jack. A policewoman picked him up from prison and told him the bus surveillance had proven his innocence. She wants to invite him for a meal. Jack readily agrees. He goes to the barber shop to tidy up. A Ford parks at the door. Two young men from the town fix in on Jack. The young men have knowledge about Jack. After the threat, they leave swaggeringly. Jack goes to the police station for the appointment. Another murder occurs in the town. The body is found next to the previous crime scene. The policewoman goes to the morgue to learn about the case. Jack waits for the policewoman to finish her shift. At this moment, Jack sees a photo of the deceased on the computer. Through the injuries, he realizes the deceased is his brother. He goes to the morgue to confirm the death of his brother and makes Jack, who wanted to leave the town, decide to stay to find the killer who murdered his brother. At night, Jack returns to the hotel to rest. 4 thugs follow him. Jack gets angry. Now the 4 individuals are in trouble. 3 of them have their arms twisted. The remaining person escapes with them. The group of thugs leaves Jack sleepless. His brother working for the National Security Bureau? Why did he appear in the town? The whole case is filled with mysteries. Paul's phone left at the scene becomes the only breakthrough. To uncover the truth as soon as possible, Jack takes the policewoman to Paul's house, but Paul is not at home. He disappeared after his release. His wife has no knowledge. Jack pretends to go to the restroom and searches Paul's room. He finds wild grass seeds on his shoes. A wealthy banker. How could there be wild grass seeds on his shoes? Jack recalls his time in prison. He wasn't the target of the second group of prisoners. He consents. The other side was after Paul's glasses. It's obvious. Paul is the person that group is looking for. The 2 of them arrive at the crime scene. Investigation reveals the seeds on the shoes are the same as those here. Jack attempts to reason. He simulates and reconstructs the case, but it has no effect. He can only return to the hotel to rest. The next day, Jack goes to the police station. He is informed by the policewoman another murder has occurred in the town. The victim is the police chief. Jack rushes to the crime scene. He displays his exceptional deductive skills. Even before entering, he deduces from the footprints at the entrance. He concludes that there are 4 perpetrators, and the victim was nailed to the wall. The facts confirm his deduction. His wife lies in a pool of blood. The police chief was nailed to the wall. The reason Jack is so certain is because Paul mentioned that this would be the outcome if he didn't cooperate. So Paul, whose whereabouts are unknown, is likely to have been killed. The police chief is murdered. Jack suspects there is a spy within the police station. Oscar brings colleagues from other regions to help. They protect Paul's wife. The newly appointed chief, Tyler, is calming the public, but as the direct beneficiary, Tyler is a suspect. Tyler orders Jack to leave shortly after, in order to find out the mastermind behind the scenes. Jack concludes prison guard Spike must have been involved. He was the one who changed the prison cell, giving the assassin an opportunity to attack Paul. Jack arranges a meeting with Spike using Oscar's identity. Unexpectedly, Spike becomes suspicious. He was waiting for Jack to fall into his trap. 2 armed thugs suddenly appear. They force Jack into the trunk. Jack remains calm. He engages the thugs in a discussion about the size of the trunk. To distract their attention, he seizes the opportunity to deliver a fatal blow. These thugs are well trained. In the midst of the struggle, Jack gets injured, but he manages to eliminate the 2 thugs. At this moment, the police arrive. Jack is unsure if the police are friend or foe. He chooses to escape. Later, the policewoman helps treat his wounds. Jack judged by the gangster's accent and skills that they are mercenaries from South America. Otherwise, with Jack's skills, he could take them out in 10 seconds. At this moment, the policewoman discovers Jack's brother, John, works in the Special Operations Department of the National Security Agency, mainly responsible for protecting the president and conducting investigations into fraud, among other tasks. But the specific area John is responsible for will only be known tomorrow. Jack thinks about Paul being a currency manager. Could it be related to counterfeiting currency? The investigation once again reaches a deadlock. Jack decides to relax and have a drink at a bar. Oscar is worried that Jack might act recklessly, so he asks the policewoman to follow him. After finishing their meal, the policewoman takes Jack home. A police car blocks their way. The officers informs them that the road ahead has collapsed, and they can't pass through temporarily. The man finds a hotel to stay temporarily. Next day, the two of them drove back to the policewoman's house, but they found the door lock had been forced open. There was a message written behind, saying, "See you soon." Jack asked the policewoman for a handgun. After thinking it over, she finally took out the gun. Just then, Oscar sent a message. They identified the identity of the victim in the first murder case. The three of them met at the morgue. According to the forensic investigation report, the deceased's name was Joel Bolin. He was a truck driver. His blood contained a large amount of hydrogen cyanide, possibly due to excessive exposure to vehicle exhaust fumes. The deceased had no criminal record, except for a previous arrest for a traffic violation. He was later acquitted. His defense law firm was the most expensive one in the local area. How could a truck driver afford such an expensive lawyer? Jack believed there must be something fishy about it. The three of them were ready to start their investigation. The policewoman's phone rang. It was a call from the Special Operations Department of the National Security Agency. Finally, they received news from the agency. The caller was Jasmine, John's superior, and also John's partner. Upon hearing the news of John's murder, Jasmine was deeply saddened. Jasmine said John was the director of the Special Operations Department. He was primarily responsible for investigating antique forgery cases. Due to John's secretive investigation, want to know the specific details. Jasmine needs time to organize the relevant information. Jack reminds Jasmine to handle the information with confidentiality. Because John chose to investigate secretly, it's highly possible that there are issues within the Special Operations Department. After ending the call, the three of them start to pursue their own leads. Oscar goes to the home address of the prison guard, Spike. He politely knocks on the door to test the waters. No one responds. He decides to forcefully break in. Coincidentally, a neighbor witnessed it. Oscar enters the house. He discovers a cell phone in the bedroom. The call records on the phone are all from the same number. Just then, he is suddenly attacked by someone. Two police officers mistake him for a burglar and beat him up. On the other hand, Jack's investigation at the law firm goes smoothly. There's nothing that can't be solved with violence. He directly threatens the boss using the phone line. He obtains Joel Bolin's case file. The policewoman, in order to avoid arousing suspicion from Chief Tyler, she stays back at the police station. But her colleague, Leo, seems a bit off. He deliberately approaches and engages the policewoman in conversation. It's obvious he's trying to gather information. The policewoman realizes it and brushes it off. Later, the three of them meet up at a restaurant. Jack learns from Joel Bolin's file the transportation company he worked for has a partnership with Kleiner Industries. The money for hiring the lawyer was also paid by Kleiner Industries, and the number Oscar saw on the prison guard's phone is also Kleiner Corporation's phone number. All the clues point to Kleiner Industries. Afterward, Jack and Oscar go to this company. They have just entered the factory. Jack sensed something was wrong. Surprisingly, there were no surveillance cameras in the factory. The amount of cattle feed being transported by workers was unusually high. As they walked towards the boss's office, Jack noticed the complete animal specimens. After meeting the boss, Kleiner, he couldn't get any useful information. The two of them returned to the hotel. Jack decided to try his luck at the meeting place with the prison guard. At a nearby bar, Jack found the boxer who knew Spike. The boxer claimed that he had won a golden belt. Jack quickly knocked him down, but he had no idea about Spike's whereabouts. Jack walked out of the bar, preparing to drive away. He noticed someone was following him. What actions would a world-class detective take when being followed? First, get out of the car and enter the bar. Retrieve a pair of gloves from the kitchen. He returned to the car, increased the speed to 80 miles per hour, speeding all the way, then turning into a small road, pulling out a gun, opening the door, and jumping into the bushes. The empty SUV quickly stopped, while Jack crouched in the bushes. Soon, the tracking vehicle arrived. Two South American assassins approached the SUV. Jack revealed himself. He shot and killed their leader with 2 shots. He skillfully picked up the shell casings, took out the gloves. First, he searched their bodies for keys. He took possession of the receipts. Then he disposed of the bodies. He dragged the bodies into the trunk. However, when he opened the trunk, Jack discovered that the prison guard, Spike, whom he was looking for, was lying inside. Jack continued to process the scene. He smashed the assassins' phones. Then he searched the trunk, leaving no trace behind. At this moment, he found a lighter and hair wax in Spike's pocket. discarded the hair wax as it was not useful, took the lighter, after completing all of this, then stuffed the body into the trunk. While Jack was busy with murder and hiding the bodies, Oscar was not idle either. He found Paul's colleague, but from him he learned Paul had quit the bank a year ago. Meanwhile, the policewoman on her way back, she encountered KJ Kleiner's son. He was the pickup truck youth who threatened Jack. He admired the policewoman. He came specifically to warn the policewoman to stay away from Jack. He claimed Jack was a murderer. The policewoman didn't believe him at all. She drove away directly. At this time, Jack received a call from Oscar. He said he found an important clue. A farmer had reported he found a burnt car. It was highly likely the car John rented after arriving in the town. Jack and Oscar arrived at the scene. The car had no license plates. The entire car had been deliberately hidden in the bushes. Jack examined the burnt traces inside. He concluded it was intentional. Jack used ketchup to reveal the vehicle identification number. At this moment, the policewoman also arrived at the scene. Jack informed both of them about the murders. Then he wanted to go back and continue handling the bodies. But Oscar, being a police officer, stopped him. Jack didn't care about that. Before the truth is discovered, he had to hide the bodies to avoid attracting the attention of police from other states. Afterward, Jack brought the policewoman back to the scene. The policewoman saw the body. She asked why KJ said he was a murderer. Jack explained, during his time in the military, he was on a mission in a village near the town. He encountered several children being abused by villagers. Jack intervened. The villagers wanted to retaliate against Jack. They sneaked into his house. Jack became aware of it. He hid in the dark and shot all three of them. That's why KJ said Jack was a murderer. After listening to the explanation, they eliminated the barrier between them. They decided to hide the body at the airport. Then, Jack deliberately sabotaged the surveillance at the airport parking lot. The security guard at the booth went to check the unusual surveillance. Jack approached the booth and opened the gate barehanded. The policewoman drove the car with the body inside. After parking, she wiped away the fingerprints. She took off the license plates and hid them in her clothes. She took advantage of the security guard's absence during the surveillance repair and slipped away. She arrived at the hotel's parking lot. Jack removed his own license plates and replaced them with the hearse license plates. He then threw his own license plates into the bushes. After completing all of this, they entered the hotel to rest. Before entering the room, he took a bunch of toothpicks. Once inside, he stuffed the toothpicks into the door gap. Then he put a chair to block the door. If hidden and broken, this would buy them some time. Then they used clothes hangers to secure the curtains, blocking the sniper's line of sight. After completing all of this, Jack received a call from Jasmine. Jasmine had organized the files. They agreed to meet in exchange at the subway station tomorrow afternoon at 5 o'clock. On that day, they visited Coburn's wife. The wife learned about her husband's death. She wasn't sad. Instead, she felt he deserved it because the wife knew her husband had stolen air conditioners from Kleiner Industries during his work. Now all of the air conditioners went to their intended destination. With just the income of a truck driver, how could he afford a villa? He also helped his parents repay a large loan. Since he has angered the wrong people, he definitely won't have a good outcome. His wife had long been mentally prepared. Afterward, his wife brought the two of them to the warehouse. Inside, there were air conditioning boxes stolen by Coburn. Jack concluded, selling air conditioners alone wouldn't earn him a villa. The air conditioning boxes might contain counterfeit money. At this moment, Oscar called the burned car. They found relevant information through the vehicle identification number. They immediately met up with Oscar's colleagues. They learned from their colleague the user of the vehicle is named Haro. Haro had a record of staying at a motel. After hearing this, Jack, he was sure that it was the alias his brother John often used. Moreover, there was no record of him checking out from the motel he stayed at, so the motel might still have John's personal belongings. After obtaining the motel's address, they immediately rushed to the motel, but they arrived one step too late. Just moments ago, two Spanish men took John's briefcase. Together with a suit, the two of them walked out of the motel. Jack deduced John knew he was being pursued. He wouldn't keep important information in the briefcase, so the suit was the key. Those two people took to things. They would quickly flee the scene. It's highly likely they would discard the useless suit. Thinking this through, Jack opened a nearby trash bin. Sure enough, the suit was inside. He found John's investigation notes in the crevice of the suit bag. At this moment, suddenly, the two of them came under fire. It turned out to be the two assassins. Since they didn't find any information in the briefcase, they returned, the men decided to split up and run. Jack lured the gunfire and ran into an alley with the paper note. The pursuing car got stuck in the alley. Jack took the opportunity to kill one of them, but his gun ran out of bullets. The other person caught up, but they were met with Jack's aerial assault. They engaged in close combat. Jack knocked the assassin's gun away. Then he kicked him down, but he didn't expect the gun to be right there. The assassin picked up the gun and aimed it at Jack. At a critical moment, a female police officer arrived and saved Jack. She then informed Oscar. Oscar suspected his office phone was tapped by Leo, and he deciphered the secret code. This led to the assassins finding the motel ahead of time. Then the three of them regrouped. Oscar discovered a note with Paul's phone number. It perfectly matched John's investigation notes. This proved the note found in the first corpse Shusol was intentionally placed there by John. Besides Paul's number on the note, there were 3 other phone numbers in Cobur's garage. Jack and the policewoman had been to the garage, but they didn't find any clues. So there are 3 phone numbers left. So the 3 of them dialed the numbers separately. The number Jack dialed was for the Memphis Environmental Protection Agency. The policewoman called the number of Professor William, an economics professor at Princeton University. Voice prompt returned 3 days after attending the meeting, whereas Oscar is the number of Professor Fanny from the economics department at Columbia University. Similarly, a voice prompt to return 3 days after attending the meeting. What is the connection between all of this? In order to find out the reasons, Jack sought help from his friend Neckley. He is a private detective. After learning about the situation, Neckley agreed to help with the investigation. Seeing that it was almost 5:00, everyone rushed to the subway to meet Jasmine. Although Jasmine had never met Jack, but she recognized him at first sight because he looked so much like her brother John. Several people waited at the elevator entrance for Jasmine to come up, but they waited for a long time and didn't see any sign of her. They had a bad feeling about it. Jack immediately rushed down the elevator. He found Jasmine's suitcase on the tracks, but it was empty. He followed the tracks and found Jasmine, but she had already been shot and killed. Seeing his sister-in-law dead here, Jack was filled with immense grief and anger. He swore to make the killer pay a painful price. Since his car was shot through, Jack went to Paul's house. He borrowed a Bentley sports car. He drove to the Clinner Industries cattle ranch. He actually asked the cows directly. Jack asked the cows if their boss was the killer. He didn't get an answer. Jack turned around and left, but as he lowered his head, he suddenly noticed wheat seeds stuck to his shoes. Aren't these the same kind that was on Paul's shoes? Jack fell into deep thought. Jack found the policewoman and noticed that offensive words were written on the policewoman's car. Jack believed it was done by the landlord's son, KJ. Jack went directly to him. KJ faced Jack's questioning. KJ not only admitted, he began to taunt. Jack slapped him, then he knocked him down to the ground. Jack's pent-up emotions were finally released. KJ's henchmen were knocked down by Jack. KJ picked up the knife from the table, intending to retaliate. At that moment, Oscar and the policewoman arrived at the scene. Clinner also appeared before them. KJ had no choice but to put down the knife. However, after Jack and the others left the restaurant, retaliation fell upon the policewoman. Chief Tyler called. He fired the policewoman. The investigation itself was already very difficult. Now it became even more difficult. The next one to be fired would definitely be Oscar. They had to act quickly. Currently, the only clue they had was the note left by John. The note contained a paragraph. Clinner's Clinner file. Clinner was the policewoman's foster father. He was also the former police chief. Clinner had already died by suicide. The policewoman certainly knew that her foster father didn't leave any files. At this point, Jack thought of something. Clinner had left a handgun for the policewoman. The box used for storing the gun likely held some clues. Jack found a key in the hidden compartment. There were no file cabinets or similar things in Clinner's home. Jack suddenly recalled the policewoman had mentioned before. Her foster father was a particularly meticulous man. Even though he didn't have much hair left on his head, he would still go for a trim every week. Jack realized the answer to the problem might be in the barber shop. They hurriedly rushed over. They found a box here. It was filled with information about Clinner Industries. The information indirectly proved Clinner Industries was involved in counterfeiting money, but this was only circumstantial evidence. If they wanted to take down Clinner, they still needed direct evidence. At this moment, the policewoman suddenly realized her foster father may not have died by suicide. The next day, the policewoman found a forensic doctor. They retrieved photos of her foster father. The fatal wound on the body was magnified 100 times. The image was exceptionally high definition. They could even see the intricate patterns of the wound. The shapes formed by the patterns resembled a diamond. The policewoman instantly understood who had murdered her foster father. That person was none other than Chief Tyler, because his cane was a diamond. Subsequently, the policewoman went to the police station. She walked up to Tyler and punched him. Oscar appeared just in time. He took away the out-of-control policewoman. Tyler ordered her arrest and capture. Oscar took the policewoman out of town for refuge. On the other side, Neckley's investigation made progress. Jack met up with him in New York. He learned it from him. In John's investigative notes, the owner of the Environmental Protection Agency's phone was named Wicks. However, Wicks had been shot and killed 5 years ago. He had also been beaten after death. The modus operandi matched the first murder case in the town, and he was in charge of the investigation, the pollution case in the New York River. The source of the pollution, it was Cleaner Industries. After that, Cleaner Industries moved into the town. Soon after, a federal officer was shot and killed. There were many suspicious aspects to the case. However, the police concluded it was a home invasion robbery. It turned out that Cleaner Industries had such power. In the evening, Neckley met the police officers with Jack, the righteous police officers. O'Connor. He had conducted a secret investigation into Wick's death. From his informant, he learned the killer who murdered Wicks was nicknamed the Viking. Besides that, there were no other leads. Suddenly, something unexpected happened on their way back. O'Connor's partner aimed the gun at him. He pulled the trigger. Then, they were about to head towards destruction with a car full of people. Jack violently kicked. The driver was pinned against the steering wheel. The vehicle lost control and plunged into the river. Jack could have saved the officers and escaped together, but he willingly chose to sacrifice himself. The officer's family was being controlled by someone. The assassination attempt failed. If he returned, his family would be in danger. In the end, Jack and the other person successfully escaped. Neckley stayed behind. He continued investigating the Viking. Jack returned to the town. Meanwhile, Oscar sneaked into Cleaner Industries. He wanted to find evidence of Cleaner's counterfeit money operation. However, when he entered the office, the scene before his eyes was unbelievable. Cleaner was actually dead. The next day, Jack looked at the photo of the deceased. Based on the wounds inferred, this was a common tactic used by Venezuelan mercenaries. The on-rent sites of the two of them speculated the killer might be one of Cleaner's clients in Venezuela. Even if the boss was dead, the counterfeit money empire was still operating. The two of them decided to keep an eye on Cleaner Industries' transportation lines. Jack switched to a beat-up car. He picked up Oscar and arrived at Cleaner's freight depot. They quickly obtained results from their stakeout. Cleaner's nephew, Dawson, left the factory in a truck. There was a high possibility that the truck contained a large amount of counterfeit money. The two of them immediately followed, from daytime to nighttime. Taking advantage of Dawson's break, Jack climbed onto the truck. He cut open the roof to inspect. However, he found that it was empty inside. But the truck was empty. What was Dawson doing with a long journey? This puzzled Jack. Jack remembered John's investigation notes had the phone numbers of the professors. Today happened to be the day they returned from their conference. He decisively dialed one of the numbers. Unexpectedly, he learned it from Professor William's nanny. Just a few hours ago, Professor William was shot and killed. He immediately hung up and dialed the next one, but nobody answered the call. He had no choice but to leave a voicemail, informing the person that there is danger. Hurry and take shelter at the police station. Hang up the call. Jack hurriedly headed towards New York. At this moment, the female police officer's hiding in the safe house. She noticed a light outside the window. She approached with her handgun to investigate. She discovered two assassins making a phone call not far away. The policewoman accidentally stepped on a branch. The assassins chased after her. They fired several shots at the policewoman. The policewoman took cover and avoided the bullets. Then, she shot back and hit one of the assassins. She quickly changed positions and kept a watchful eye. She noticed the exposed thigh of the other assassin. She was about to shoot, but the assassin pulled back his leg. Although she lost her target, it didn't affect the policewoman's actions. The bullet shattered the nearby tree bark. Wood splinters momentarily blinded the assassin. A hand grenade fell to the ground. It exploded on the spot. The safe house was no longer safe. The policewoman brought Paul's wife and daughter to a nearby town, and she informed Picard to come for assistance. During the wait, Paul's wife revealed the truth. 1 year ago, after Paul was fired from the bank and became unemployed, Clinner approached him with a high payment, asking him to assist in the legal transfer of hard currency. It was easy for Paul. He quickly completed the currency transfer. Clinner asked Paul to send him the transfer records. Without much thought, Paul sent it over. Unexpectedly, he fell into Clinner's trap. Clinner took Paul to a horse stable and told him every single transferred amount is related to an international counterfeit money scheme. At this point, Paul finally realized he was deceived. To ensure Paul's loyalty, Clinner imprisoned him in the horse stable. Then he instructed his subordinates to nail a man to the wall in front of him, while threatening and warning him, also threatening his family's lives. Paul had no choice but to join. After Paul's wife finished speaking, the card arrived at the restaurant to take them away. On the other side, Jack arrived in New York. First, he bought a suit, then he went to the police station. He met her in the identity of Attorney Fanny. It turned out, Professor Fanny, after receiving Jack's call, she hid in the police station. This series of actions helped her save her life. From Fanny's mouth, Jack learned someone is producing super counterfeit bills. These bills are indistinguishable as real or fake. John discovered the key lies in the paper used for counterfeit money, and they obstructed the source of the paper. That's why he was murdered. Therefore, if Jack can't find out the source of paper, he can't destroy the entire counterfeit empire. After Jack left the police station, spotted the killer following in the mirror, Jack lured him into the alley, and they began to fight face to face. Jack was very strong, but the assassin was not willing to back down. They fought from the ground all the way to the stairs. Jack loosened his tie, gripped a weapon, and instantly turned the tide. The assassin had his joints twisted by Jack and died a violent death. In the evening, Officer Leo was immersed in the joy of his wife's pregnancy. Little did he know, a pickup truck stopped outside, and 4 men in isolation suits got out of the vehicle. They slowly walked towards Leo's house. Just as Jack got off the plane, he was taken by the police to the crime scene of Leo. Leo and his wife were tied to chairs, facing each other, with mirrors surrounding them. Leo's eyes were forcibly opened with tape, and after seeing this, Jack made an inference. The killer must want to extract some information from Leo, making him a spectator. As he watched his wife being killed through the mirror, Oscar deduced that it was Clinner's nephew, Dawson. He believed that Jack and the others were getting close to the truth, so everyone around them will be killed. Afterwards, Tyler called the 2 of them out of the room, and he fired Oscar on the grounds of poor performance in the case. After Tyler left, Jack looked at Officer back at the door and suddenly said, "I want to invite the last police officers in town to have a meal together." They then went to a restaurant and started discussing Leo's case. Jack said that everyone's death feels like someone has made a death list. Even the female police officers is being hunted, but Beck is the only one who seems unaffected. This means that Beck is not involved in this matter. Jack deliberately told Beck that he would go to Paul's house tonight to look for evidence. Afterwards, Jack went to the auto repair shop to pick up his car. An action of the shopkeeper using cat litter to clean the oil stains made him pensive. After picking up his car, Jack went to the supermarket to purchase knives, a baton, and camouflage clothing. In the evening, he arrived early at Paul's house and turned the television volume to the maximum. He went into the bathroom, applied makeup, put on the camouflage clothing, grabbed all his equipment, put on a hat, walked out the door, and crouched in the bushes. Tonight is his hunting moment. Soon, a pickup truck stopped at Paul's house, and 4 assassins got out of the car. They forcefully entered the house, while Jack killed the driver by breaking the window. Then he turned on the hazard lights to attract the attention of the assassins inside the house. One of the assassins stepped outside to check in. As soon as he opened the car door, he saw the dead driver. Before he could react, Jack killed him from behind. Jack entered the house through the back door and easily killed 1 person. Soon, another assassin discovered his dead comrade and followed the footprints on the ground. The footprints led to a room, but when he opened the door, there was only a pair of shoes. Suddenly, Jack rushed out and stabbed him several times. Happened to be seen by Dawson. Dawson immediately fired his gun, and Jack confronted him while using the corpse as a shield. Dawson ran out of ammunition and picked up a weapon to fight back. The 2 of them engaged in a fierce hand-to-hand combat, fighting from inside the house to outside. Dawson knocked Jack's handgun out of his hand and continued to attack him with a large iron rod. Jack was knocked down into the swimming pool, and Dawson followed him, choking him by the neck. In a critical moment, Jack reached for the handgun and shot Dawson 3 times, killing him. The 4 killers involved in the serial murders disappeared. Afterward, Jack collected all the weapons carried by the assassins in the trunk of his car. After taking a shower He noticed that the writing on the note became blurry, and he instantly understood the secret of the currency empire. He called the female police officers to inform her. It turns out that although the denominations of U.S. banknotes are different, they have the same size. So, by bleaching a $1 bill, one can obtain specialized paper for U.S. banknotes, and then print a $100 pattern on the paper. This process turns $1 into $100, and it becomes difficult to distinguish between genuine and counterfeit bills. This is the secret behind this international counterfeiting case. The currency manager, Paul, is primarily responsible for finding and collecting a large number of $1 bills from cash-intensive businesses that want to conceal their income from the government, such as casinos, payday loan companies, national retail chains, and so on. The acquired $1 bills are transported to Kleine Industries, where they undergo centralized bleaching. The industrial wastewater is discharged into the river, which is also the reason why the environmental agency investigators were murdered. Later on, they use animal feed to solve the industrial wastewater problem. The store clerks use cat litter to handle oil stains, because cat litter contains diatomaceous earth, which is also present in animal feed. Kleine Industries first purchases hundreds of cows and then buys a large quantity of feed to avoid arousing suspicion from the government. Then, the freshly printed banknotes are aged using a washing machine, and truck drivers transport the packaged money to clients in Venezuela. With money in hand, Kleine Industries can use large amounts of cash to buy people's loyalty. However, in order to catch them, a substantial amount of counterfeit money is needed as direct evidence. After reporting to the female police officers, Jack called Oscar and prepared to retell the situation. However, Oscar was in a dangerous situation, as 3 assassins had found the hotel he was staying in. After learning about the situation, Jack remotely guided Oscar to escape by turning up the volume of the TV. Through Oscar's description, it was revealed that the hotel was a cheap apartment, and the walls were likely made of inexpensive slate. Jack instructed Oscar to retrieve a clothes hanger from the wardrobe, then start chiseling the wall and give it a strong push. In the astonished gaze of the neighbor Mr. Wang, he escaped through the window. He circled to the front of the building, taking advantage of the moment when the assassins entered the room. He immediately opened the car door and got in. Before leaving, he punctured the assassin's car tires. The next day, the two of them met up and went to the Jublin's house. Jack had a hunch that something was left behind in their garage, but when they arrived, they realized they were too late. People from Kleine Industries burned down the Jublin's house completely, but fortunately, Jublin's wife had already left during the previous investigation. At this moment, Jack suddenly realized that Judy didn't take her husband's surname. Therefore, the note mentioning the Jublin couple referred to someone else, possibly Jublin's parents. Soon, the two of them visited Jublin's parents, and as expected, they found a large amount of counterfeit money in their garage, which provided crucial evidence. Jack instructed Oscar to call Picard and ask him to bring the female officers to the designated meeting point. Oscar proceeded ahead while Jack followed with the evidence. At this moment, he received a call from Neckley, and Neckley had obtained results from the investigation. The person in charge of investigating the Environmental Protection Agency case was named Knight, a corrupt cop who lived in a mansion and drove luxury cars. He died of cancer 3 years ago, but he had a partner named Picard. Jack entered the room and was immediately restrained. At this moment, all the masterminds were gathered inside the cabin, and it turned out that the traitor among them was Picard. Finally, Tyler took Jack's gun, and KJ tied up the female officers and Paul's wife and daughter. He revealed everything to Jack. He was the one who imitated Venezuela's methods to kill his own father, and he was also the one who hired Picard as his partner to kill the Environmental Protection Agency investigator. And the deaths of Jasmine and John, just like Joblin, are also related to KJ. The mastermind behind all of this is KJ, and the crazy person who brutally attacked the bodies after death is his cousin Dawson. In the first case, the former police chief covered up the body, and then KJ killed him. However, KJ didn't kill Jack right away. It turned out that Paul, who had all the evidence of the counterfeit money empire, had hidden it. KJ had investigated Jack and learned that he was skilled in tracking, so they threatened Jack to find Paul, who was in hiding, before 6 a.m. If he failed, the lives of the female officers and Paul's wife and daughter would be in danger. Afterward, Jack and Picard went to a restaurant. Jack ordered a cup of coffee and peach pie, then took out a map to start searching for someone. How should they search? Jack randomly drew a few circles on the map. and immediately he had an answer. He's in Augusta. Why? Jack explained that Paul needed to stay away to protect his wife, but it wouldn't go too far in case of emergencies. Therefore, the distance would be reduced, and the place near the small town related to Paul was Augusta. Paul's golf club sat in the underground garage was from there. At this moment, the waiter served the food, and Jack deliberately spilled the coffee. He took the opportunity to steal a fork. After leaving, he inserted the fork into the Bentley's tire. Soon, the Bentley's system gave a warning about low tire pressure. Jack got out of the car to change the tire. Picard, afraid of accidents, got out of the car and watched. This played right into Jack's hands. To change the tire, the trunk needed to be opened, and in the trunk were the weapons confiscated by Jack. Jack quickly picked up the weapon, but the other person reacted quickly as well. The two of them instantly found themselves at an impasse. Picard said, "You can't kill me. Only my voice can make KJ release the hostage. Otherwise, when the time runs out, the female officers will be killed." Jack countered, "You can't kill me either. Without me, you won't be able to find Paul. If you fail to complete the mission, you'll die as well." Finally, after negotiation, the two of them reached a compromise. Jack proposed counting to 1, raising the gun to the head, counting to 2, putting down the gun, counting to 3, and stepping out. Then Jack started counting down. He didn't keep his promise. When he reached 3, he shot and killed Picard. Jack drove to a motel near the Augusta bus station and successfully found Paul. Paul, in order to evade pursuit, wouldn't dare to use a credit card. So, with cash in hand, he could only take the bus. With limited cash and needing long-term accommodation, he had to choose the cheapest motel. On the way back in the car, through Paul's words, it was revealed that he had reported John in order to save himself. At the same time, it was discovered that Zobuline was embezzling, so he was used as an intermediary to contact John. Unexpectedly, KJ discovered it and silenced him completely. Meanwhile, Oscar was brutally beaten by Beck. After the beating, he was locked up in a detention center. Suddenly, Oscar's phone received a message. Beck approached to check it. The message said, "Find cover, hide." Just as he hadn't figured out the meaning yet, a car crashed into the police station. It directly hit Beck, killing him. Then Jack and others got out of the car. Oscar was successfully rescued. The group started preparing weapons to rescue the policewoman and Paul's wife and daughter. Jack picked up a bucket from the ground. Meanwhile, Neckley also arrived at the police station. Paul drew a map of the cleaner factory from memory. The group then rushed to the entrance of the factory. Jack filled the bucket with gasoline. Neckley set up the sniper rifle. He killed the guards at the entrance. Jack poured the gasoline into the factory. Oscar casually flicked out a cigarette and ignited the gasoline. The factory instantly caught fire. Chaos ensued. The four of them rushed into the factory. Neckley took a high position to kill enemies. Jack engaged in close combat. Meanwhile, Paul took the opportunity to rescue his two daughters. With Oscar providing cover, Jack successfully rescued the policewoman. The policewoman escorted Paul's wife out of the factory. They met up with Paul. She immediately joined the fight. On the other side, Oscar encountered Picard. Surprisingly, he was still alive. Picard forcefully collided with him, knocking him down. Under the intense attack, Oscar was no match at all. However, he seized the opportunity. He grabbed Picard's wound. He successfully killed Picard. He pushed him towards the packaging machine. Without hesitation, he pressed the switch. Picard instantly turned into minced meat. The policewoman was ambushed by Tyler. Seeing Tyler closing in, the policewoman used a scissor kick to trip him. They wrestled on the ground. After a struggle, the policewoman trapped Tyler on a railing and killed him. The smoke inside the factory was too thick. The policewoman regrouped with the other two. They exited the factory. Jack was in a confrontation with KJ, but soon, Jack ran out of bullets. He could only resort to ambushing KJ. He engaged in hand-to-hand combat with him. KJ was no match for him. He grabbed an axe nearby and swung it. Jack evaded by sidestepping. He grabbed KJ. He pressed him into a bleach tank. He kicked him into the sea of fire, meeting his maker. The battle came to an end. Neckley also chose to leave. Jack looked at his World War II medal. Jack reminisced. It was the memento his mother left him before she passed away. At the moment of her death, it was also his last meeting with his brother. A wave of sadness overwhelmed him. At the end of the film, Jack buried the World War II medal at his brother's resting place, saying goodbye to his partner and the policewoman. He also left the town, continuing his life as a wanderer. The film ended here. Watching this kind of lone hero-themed blockbuster in one go was truly exhilarating. Although the plot wasn't very innovative, but the combination of tough guy and detective elements was still very captivating. The story went straight to the point, The action scenes were also very exciting. Those who liked it can watch the original film again. It will definitely not disappoint you. If you like my channel, please subscribe to my channel.